Minutes past 7, a Liberal Democrat MEP has asked the Anti-Fraud Unit for all the European Union institutions to investigate the way that members of the European Parliament pay their staff, because he says he's seen an internal report that reveals serious abuses of the way the money is handled, the money they get for those purposes. We'll talk to Chris Davis, MEP, in a moment, who's making these claims. First to our Europe correspondent, Johnny Diamond. Johnny, how much money do MEPs get to pay their staff with?
Well, overall, they get just over £100 million a year. Individually, they get something around £120,000 each. And the problem that appears to have been brought out in this internal audit, which is still secret and I haven't seen, but I've been told by a reliable source what's inside it, is that that money is simply not being properly supervised. One MEP is reported to have taken the money and not employed anyone. Another MEP is said to have just employed one person, which would be a very high wage, even by European Parliament standards. And then there's a sort of long list of things which essentially slip from, depending on your view, either very sloppy administration to downright fraud, social security payments not being made, independent bodies not being independent, and just a sort of murkiness about where this really large sum of money is going to.
How tough can the anti-fraud unit be?
Oh, pretty tough, pretty tough. I mean, look, there is controversy about nearly every European institution, and the anti-fraud unit, which is known as OLAF, has its critics as well, who say it's not hard enough, it's not rigorous enough. But OLAF has scored some pretty notable successes over the last few years and has claimed some fairly major scalps, and its reaction to the report seems to be pretty vigorous. It hasn't got the report yet. The report was an internal one for the European Parliament, but it certainly seems to be alarmed by the report and is also indicating that has some pretty good knowledge about some of the things that MEPs have been getting up to in the past.
Johnny Diamond, thanks very much. Well, let's bring in Chris Davis MP, who wants the fraud unit, the anti-fraud unit, to look at this whole thing. Good morning.
Good morning.
What is it that's convinced you that this investigation is necessary?
Oh, complete shock and horror when I saw this document. I heard about it completely by accident. I found that as a member of the Budget Control Committee, I was one of the very few MEPs allowed to see it if I signed documents demonstrating confidentiality, if I sat in a private sealed room under supervision without taking notes.
So you can't reveal the details publicly, but you're happy to say that it shocked you?
I'm not supposed to reveal those details, but I have to say, first of all, this document should not, absolutely not, be kept secret. It should definitely be in the public domain. It outlines from our auditors the problems, the extent of the problems. It outlines individual examples of malpractices, but without naming the MEPs concerned. And it projects a whole host of recommendations for improvement. Now, there was nothing in that document which should not be in the public domain. But my next action was simply that I was so angry by the extent of the malpractices that were revealed that I went straight back to my office, made as many notes as I could, and phoned the anti-fraud office.
If you hadn't done that, would this report have remained secret?
I don't know. I hope that other members would have done the same. I spoke to the anti-fraud office. They said, well, they'd heard about this document, but they hadn't seen it. They would like to see it, and I've since had conversations with the Director General and the head of the investigations unit, both of whom have said they've now been in touch with the parliamentary authorities, and they will have a copy of this document by tomorrow. They've given me every indication that they intend to pursue it vigorously. Let's be quite honest. I think the allegations within this report from our own auditors should lead to the imprisonment of a number of MEPs.
Imprisonment? You think it's that bad?
I think it's embezzlement and fraud on a massive, massive scale. Now, the only question, in my mind, is whether or not the Parliament has actually put in place such appallingly lax systems that MEPs are able to work within the rules and within the law, yet at the same time pocketing huge sums of money. I don't want to condemn everyone here. There's a lot of people in this Parliament working very hard for good purposes and are doing their very best to be honest and to bring about reform. But frankly, all our efforts are undermined by the actions of some of the people who the auditors, well, from the reading of this document, the auditors were frankly astonished at the scale of the abuse.
Just finally, you indicate that names weren't used in the document. Does that mean you don't know whether or not any British members of the European Parliament are involved in the practices that have shocked you so much?
No, I don't know. I would say, generally speaking, British and Scandinavian parliaments and the members who represent those countries, Dutch members and others, would tend to be amongst the greatest reformers, and I hope their practices are amongst the cleanest. I think probably the House of Commons now and the Scandinavian parliaments are amongst the cleanest and most rigorous when it comes to accounting terms parliaments in Europe. But this sort of pressure, the public pressure for reform and to clean up our act, simply doesn't exist in some other countries. What's going on in the European Parliament may, I'm ashamed to say, be regarded as absolutely normal practice in some other countries, and that's why it's so difficult to bring about a head of steam to get reform. Maybe it's going to take a few MEPs being locked up and put into prison before we get that momentum.
Chris Davis, MEP, thanks very much.